Calamari, salutations everyone. This is the one and only, the draft analysis you've been all waiting for. This is the draft analysis for the YCL Season 2 draft. And in this video, I'm not going to be analyzing my team because I don't have any. I will be analyzing all of the teams. So we're gonna be here for a while, so go fetch a drink or something like that. I'll try not to be too nerdy or go too much in depth on all of the picks because I don't really have the time to do that. But I'll try to give you a quick summary of what happened in the draft for the YCL. And yeah, I just thought that this would be a really fitting intro image because, as you all know, the draft is a snake draft. It's usually a snake draft, so that means that the person that picks first on the first round will be the last to pick on the second round, and so on and so forth. For this particular draft of the YCL, players had 720 points to spend. Each team must have 11 members total, and the tier costs are what appear on your screen, with an S plus tier for mons that are really broken and really overpowered, and people could pick them if they wanted, but they had to pay extra cash for it. Something that I didn't mention in my previous video, but I'm going to mention now, is that there's an item clause in battles, meaning that the Pokemon that appear in battle have all to be holding different items. So let's say you have two walls on your team, you can't have them both holding the lefties. So in some cases that may condition or not what the coaches pick for their teams. One more thing, because before we get to the draft itself, I will only be analyzing what happened in the draft. What happened after will be a different conversation altogether, and let's get on with the draft itself. So for the first round, what do we have here? We have a lot, and I mean a lot, of power picks, because the first round is basically the round where you choose the mon you are going to draft around. You chose like this particular mon is a good mon and I'm gonna pick it now, and the mon that I picked will condition the rest of my draft basically, because I want to get as much value of this strong mon as possible. So, things to note here on this round: Landorus Incarnate was the first pick, and to the surprise of nobody really, because I've talked in my pre-draft analysis video how broken Landorus is, and I'm not really surprised that it was the first pick of the draft, and Sven Thun will not regret this pick, I'm really sure. Some other picks to note in this draft: Blaziken with speed boost. Blaziken is allowed to have speed boost on this league. Zygarde 50, Spectrier, Tapu Lele, Coco isn't here, but we'll have Landorus Therian also. Dragonite, a pick I really like. Dragapult, I also like Dragapult very much. But you may notice that the Crobat is highlighted. That's because in all of the rounds I'm going to highlight a Pokemon, which I will be calling that corner the Follow Me corner. So not going in depth on the rest of the Pokemons, I will be going in depth to the Follow Me Pokemon. And Crobat I highlighted this round because it highlights the strategy that Lucas used to draft, which is he's going to pick low-tiered mons that are high value because he's last pick, and he's hoping to get a lot of value out of his low-tiered mons in order to hopefully gain an edge towards the high-tiered mons that he won't be getting as much value of. So this is it for this round. I've also talked about Crobat being a really great pick and how I like it very much because it's very versatile. It can run both physical and special sets. It is more bulky than one expects to. It has defog and something I'd personally use myself. Yeah. And in the second round, we see that Lucas did continue his strategy of picking low-tiered mons. We have a fair bit of a mix here on this round. Tapu Koko finally went to the Austin Taurus, which is the last season's champion. And a power pick like Tapu Koko going on a champion is never a good sign. There's some other things I want to note here. The first is the Heatran. Heatran is paired with Tapu Lele at this point, and those two picks go hand in hand quite handily, no pun intended, but they really function well with each other. Heatran is also a very versatile mon that can run both offensive and defensive sets, and it is a really nice steel resistance for which and fairy resistance also, but the steel resistance is more important because of covering the steel weakness that Tapu Lele has. Another very interesting pick is the Conkeldurr, because Conkeldurr will threaten the normal types that Spectrier will attract on the field. So Mountay did really good with those two beginning picks because he drafted Spectrier and normal types are immune to Ghost, so he picked a fighting type as his second mon that will threaten those normal types out. Also to mention that the Cerulean City Mewtwo picked the Hippowdon and paired it with the Dracovish, so I'm really not... I really wouldn't like to be in the position of the division members from the Cerulean City Mewtwo because they will have to deal with the Sand Dracovish. Good luck with that, guys. The follow me pick for this round, it's the Cinderace. And the Cinderace is highlighted not because it's a phenomenal pick, because it is. It has bulk up, it has a lot of coverage, and it has that god bless ability of a Libero, but the Cinderace is highlighted because if you noticed in the last round, Sventhun was actually the one that picked Landorus Incarnate. That means that Sven has effectively two S+ tier mons. That means two things. One, he has two very extremely threatening mons that most teams won't have an answer for. And two, it will condition his draft on the long run because he will have to pick multiple 20-point Pokemon to cover for the expenses of just these two picks. So that's something to note going forward on the draft. Next we go to the third round, and third round is basically the round where people start defining its cores. Some people just rushed the Steel Fairy Dragon core and completed this already. Some people started going on the other cores of their team. There's some picks that I'd like to highlight. First, Lucas is still picking low-tiered mons, and I think he really did a great job going for those. An interesting pick I'd call is Lantern. Lantern this early in the draft, I'm not so sure, but I did use Lantern twice in 2 seasons, and it is a really good Pokemon that can function really well in some scenarios. And speaking of certain scenarios, Politoed, we have a Politoed, which means that the 6th Street Seviper effectively drafted Rain, so everyone now knows that that team is looking for the Rain, and they did draft the Barraskewda earlier, so that's already a Rain abuser on their team. and that's really well thought out because Barraskewda could go earlier than Politoed would, and there's also 2 rain setters in Politoed and Pelipper, and Barraskewda, there's only 1 Barraskewda, so that's a good drafting strategy on him. But the follow me pick, you see, it's the Mamoswine, and the Austin Toros I know that drafted Mamoswine last season. And when he drafted Mamoswine, I know for a fact that the Immunity Idols coach, Monte, hasn't had a good night's of sleep. Yeah, that's basically it. Mamoswine is a terrific pick. One of the few ice types that is really strong and that will give Sally's team an advantage over dragon types. It's also a really good ground type, and ground type offensively is just phenomenal. Also a rock setter, and I mean, what's not to like about Mamoswine? It's also immune to intimidates in this generation, so it's really good. And well, it's the champion, so you expect him to do good picks, right? We go on into round 4, and this round doesn't have that much to report. Just 2 things I'd like to mention. The first is the Mew. Mew is a Pokemon that I feel is only really limited by the coach that uses it, and the reason for that is that Mew has the best move pool in the game, in the whole game, and if the pick is good or bad is entirely to the coach, because you have so much liberty to do with it what you want that it will always respond accordingly, whether the coach is bad or good. And I'll put a lot of pressure under Luke Harris' shoulders to see what he is able to do with the Mew. In this round, many teams decided to continue their cores, and also there's an increasing worry about hazards. So you can see that a lot of these mons have hazards on their kit, whether it is Toxic Spikes with Drapion and Dragalge, Rock Setter like Steelix and Rhyperior and Piloswine, and Bronzong also. But the pick that I followed this round is this Cavalier. I've used this Cavalier in a league before, and I absolutely loved that pick. It was a Dynamax league, okay, but I can still see the value of Escavalier even outside of Dynamax. And the really intelligent part about the 6th Street Viper drafting this Cavalier is that its only weakness, which is fire, will be reduced by the rain. So it's nothing to lose pick for the 6th Street Viper. His only weakness is kind of covered, and although he doesn't have an immunity to fire, he does have multiple Pokemon that resist fire attacks. So the Escavalier will be extra protected and will be a menace to those who face that team. I really love this Cavalier pick on that team. Continuing down the line, still a round where nothing much happened. Don't mind the Frisbee there, it's just Cryogonal. And the pick that I followed for this round is Como. Como is a dragon type that is really versatile. It can run both DD sets and defensive ones with Body Press, which is Stab. So people should be really aware of. There's only one catch to Como, and it's a 4 times weakness to Fairy, which dragons don't really want because they will get really countered by fairies and fairy coverage in general. So that's the only thing that really impairs Como. Otherwise, it's a phenomenal pick, and I've used it before, and I recommend everyone trying that. Meanwhile, Lucas is still drafting low-tiered mons. In this time, it was the Tangela, and Tangela is really a value pick because I believe in this draft it was D tier, and I've drafted Tangela when it was a C tier, so getting D tier out of that is good value. We'll continue with the 6th round, and lots of hazard control have been drafted in this round. First of all, let's give a shout out to Sen because he drafted the 2nd Galarian bird, and he could have drafted the 3rd one. I mean, if he drafted the 3rd Galarian bird, we should call him Birdkeeper Sen. But he didn't, so that's unfortunate. So as I was saying, draft control, hazard control, we have rapid spinners, we have defoggers, we have spike setter, we have rock setters. I mean, this round has it all. And remember when I told you that Sven would have to start picking low tiered mons? Well, he did pick one last round, and he picked another one. He did a really intelligent thing in which was to start picking E tiers really early, because he knew he would have to do that eventually, and better to do it early than later, because there's still some value to get out of that tier. Another thing to report, Marini going this early in the draft, and Ferroseed also. I'm not quite sure. They can be somewhat good mons. I mean, they are low tiered, so they'll never be excellent. But I think that there would be more interesting things to pick around at this stage of the draft. The pick that I followed for this round is another pick that Sally did. Tentacruel is a phenomenal mon. It has rapid spin, it has some gimmicky sets with acid armor, it has a reflect type, which is a move that can really throw an opponent off guard and his whole preparation down the drain. It can use Black Sludge instead of lefties to recover, which is a blessing in a league that limits item usage. And the thing is, Tentacruel was picked from the C tier, I believe, and that's honestly really good value, because I've seen it picked. I've already picked Tentacruel once, and I picked it from the B tier, so getting this out of C tier is honestly amazing. Who would have known that the current champion actually does good decisions? Who would have known? Going down to round 7, fairly mixed round, with some high tier picks like Volcarona going this round. Monte grabbed a favorite of mine, which is Quillfish. I love Quillfish, it's an Intimidate mon, and I've already spoken about it in the pre-draft analysis, so I'll jump ahead. I really like the Mantine Peak also, it's a really good defogger and a really good special defense. And Mr. Luke Harry, I will have to lay another burden on your shoulders, because you picked the mascot of my team, Arcanine, and I will want to see that pick well utilized on the season. Agreed? I'm watching you. Noticing a trend here, I followed another pick of the champion. And this time is Pinsir, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Pinsir, and what I'm gonna say about Pinsir is please somebody call the police, because Sally just committed a robbery. He stole Pinsir from the E tier. When I did my draft analysis video, I really didn't notice that Pinsir was on the E tier. And Pinsir being on the E tier is honestly unheard of. That mon has terrific good coverage, it has terrific good stab in Mega Horn, and it has a Moxie boost. It has Moxie to boost its attack. It can run Choice Scarf way easily because of that, and it may not be as good. It's almost as good as Heracross in the move pool and the role that it does. But honestly, E tier, no, it's not an E tier at all. That's at least a C tier one, for sure. And the champion got another terrific pick out of E tier from all tiers. Oh my god. You guys are in so much trouble. The Sally's team is terrific, yeah. Forgot to mention, that's the Palosand there, in case you're wondering. And yeah, so for this round, the only thing I'd like to talk about is Pinsir. Really, Pinsir. There's not much else to say in comparison. Round 8. So, round 8 is the round that Copperaja went drafted. So, the Nashville Nidokings and the Southside Braves decided to put it out of its misery and drafted Copperaja. And Copperaja is really good offensively. It's also a stealth rock setter. And this is the part of the draft where low-tiered mons are being drafted by the hundreds. So we have Palpitoad here, which is a really good low-tiered pick. I really like Mawile also. I've used it once and it was really good. The Mr. Mime is also a potentially good pick. Zoroark being drafted by the champion. Oh my god. You guys are in so much trouble. But the pick I followed this round was actually the Rotom Fan. And the reason I highlighted Rotom Fan is because people really don't think highly of Rotom Fan. There's a reason for that. It's a meme. The OnlyFans has basically no ability. It's a flying type with Levitate. Who would have thought? But most people tend to forget that it's still a Rotom farm. And being still a Rotom farm means access to Pain Split, access to Nasty Plot, access to Volt Switch, access to Toxic subsets, access to being a really versatile mon and not that slow at all. So, while most people discredit Rotom Fan as being the worst of the Rotom farms, it's still a Rotom farm, and because it's still a Rotom farm, it will actually there will actually be games where it will play a really crucial role and will actually carry its team to victory. Just wait to see. And I know that Malte will be putting this pick to really good use. Round 9. Round 9 is the round of the Palm Tree, which is Alolan Executor, in case you didn't guess already. This round has low-tiered mons still exiting by the hundreds. Archeops going drafted. I mean, Archeops is one of those wildcard Pokemons where it's I feel like it either does nothing on a match or it can potentially carry the match on its own. And whether or not that will be the case, it's mostly down to the coach, so I'm expecting Cherryman Cake to pull out some great Archeops plays and try to convince me that this really is a good pick, because I'm open to see it work out in some instances. But the pick I followed for this round is actually the Lickilicky, and I highlighted the Lickilicky for 3 reasons. First, it's in the D tier. It might be good value or it might be properly tiered. It's really bulky, and being really bulky can let him function as a wall to a specific mon that's on the Brisbane's Rillaboom's division, which is Spectrier. Spectrier is one of those mons that it either destroys your team or you really have a good answer to it, and it is somewhat limited in what it can do. And Lickilicky, I feel like, is the pick that the Brisbane Rillaboomers really needed to be able to face the Spectrier. It's also a Wish Passer, which you may take advantage of. And it has being a normal type means it has a terrific move pool with lots of coverage, and being drafted in the D tier is actually a really good value pick for this team specifically. Round 10, we are in the penultimate round and we're starting to get to the end of the draft. That means that the low tiered mons that were actually higher value have gone off at this stage of the draft. That means that you start seeing lots of non fully evolved Pokemon around, like Vulpix, like Shelmet, like Dottler and Hattrem. And this round is actually the round of Trick Room mons, because there's two really prominent Trick Room users in this round, being the Dottler and the Hattrem. It's also the stage of the draft where people start grabbing mini Pokemon. What I mean by mini Pokemon is Pokemon that are basically another Pokemon but with lower stats, like the pre-evolutions. So Vulpix as a Sunsetter, Dottler as a Webs and Trick Room user, Hattrem as a Magic Bouncer, and so on and so forth. The pick I followed for this round is the Type Null. And Type Null on the Endor Teddiursa's team might actually put in some work. Type Null is a really bulky mon, and people tend to underestimate its bulk. In the SRL, it was known at the league I participated in for 3 seasons. It was actually known as the Gigantamax Burner, and that's courtesy of Sam, the lead commissioner, who used it the first time to great effect to just burn out Gigantamax turns of the opponents. But in a league where there's no Gigantamax, Type Null is still a great, phenomenal mon to have, because it has a really good supportive pool with Thunder Wave and Reflect, I believe, not Light Screen but Reflect. And it's also a U-turn user, and because it will be going off in second place most of the time, it's actually a really good pick, a really good momentum grabber for the Endor Teddiursas. And the Endor Teddiursas are a pick that has its offensive presence in the higher half of the draft, with mons that are quite squishy but pack a punch in offensive power, like Lucario, like Salazzle, and not so squishy Latios. But I feel like the Type Null will be a really key pick in some of the matches of the Teddiursas, because they will be able to put offensive pressure on the field way more safely than they would otherwise. And we finally get to the last round of the draft. So in this round, Sven Thun is still picking low-tiered mons because he basically has no budget left. Lucas, on the other hand, is picking his high-tiered mons at this stage of the draft with the Gengar. And a lot of budget Webbers were picked on this round also. With Dottler and the last round now Charjabug and Cutiefly. Webs is honestly a really good addition to your team. It's always a surprise when you bring them, if it's not a really obvious web setter, and it can net you a really good advantage on the match. Also, the pick I followed for this round is the Trevenant. And Trevenant for the Rillaboomers is actually a really good pick, because first of all, it's not a repeat typing that the Rillaboomers already had. It's a second Trick Roomer, and if you notice the speed stats on the Rillaboomers, it's actually on the lower end, so having a second one that sets Trick Room can give him a lot of speed control in some of the matches, and it's also a mon that can fill certain niches and can really catch people off guard with some of the sets that it can run. So this is the draft ended, okay? And although people drafted these mons, there was a period of time where people could trade away mons. So when I analyze teams for the power rankings, the teams won't be exactly as they were drafted here, so I will leave that discussion to that other video. What I want to discuss here is the mons that went and drafted and surprised me. So there were 5 mons from the S+ tier that went and drafted: Victini, Melmetal, Celesteela, Necrozma, and Aegislash. I've used Aegislash and I feel like S+ tier is a bit too much for it. S tier, I think it is where it should have seated, and it's don't get me wrong, it's still a phenomenal mon and it's really versatile, and it forces prep out of the opponent, and if you're not prepped for it, for the correct set it has, let's just say you're gonna have a bad time. Necrozma is a really versatile mon, and it's basically a setup machine. It can set up Iron Defense, it can set up Autotomize, it can set up Cosmic Power, I believe. Cosmic Power, not sure. But there's not much that Necrozma can't set up on. Melmetal is basically a beast on the physical side. Victini, being on the S+ tier, it does get a lot of coverage, but it doesn't have the Omni boost in these generations, so I don't know. But I'm really surprised that Celesteela didn't get drafted. So you all know Celesteela, and Celesteela is known for one thing: Leech Seed bot, and it's the only thing that it does, right? Wrong. You're also wrong, because Celesteela is basically the best, in my opinion, it's the best Ultra Beast for Draft League. It's such a versatile mon. You can get the boosts from its ability, basically from every stat but speed, I think. And it may carry matches just because of that broken ability. That's just the fact. And Celesteela is not only capable of going defensive, but it's also capable of going offensive sets. It has Autotomize to boost its speed, and that Heavy Slam will always hurt because it's basically always hitting for 120 base power. And I'm shocked. I'm honestly shocked that Celesteela went and drafted. You guys probably think of Celesteela being a terror on the ladder of Pokemon Showdown, being bulky as it is, but the real terror is in Draft League, trust me. This pick should have been drafted. You guys are sleeping on it so much. That said, another Ultra Beast that I thought would have been drafted was everyone's favorite Origami, which is Kartana. Excadrill is usually drafted, but I can see it not being drafted now that the Sand users have a new shiny toy in town, which is the Dracovish. And Salamence, being such a popular pick and such a popular mon, kind of surprised me that it went undrafted. I'm really happy for both Chansey and Blissey going undrafted. I hate those two mons. Thank God none of you drafted it. And special mention to Charizard, because it's such a popular mon that I thought that anyone would eventually draft it. I mean, it's not a great mon, but since it's so popular, I really thought that it would go drafted. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have with us none other than the Commissioner of the league himself, Sen. How you doing, Sen?
Hey, what's up, guys? Sen here, your coach of the Calexico Blazers and league owner of the YCL. I'm doing very good. It's a good Friday thus far.
Great to hear that. So, now that the draft concluded and the league is basically ready to start, Sen has a few words that he has to address to all of the coaches of the league and all of the observers that this league will have. So please go ahead, Sen.
Okay, for one, I'm really looking forward to this season. And as some of you coaches and spectators have seen, we are like a above average league. One more point, and we're as big as the WBE, which has been a long time life goal for me to accomplish. So that'll be pretty good. Like going into next season, we reach that goal. Aside from that, I know the draft was very good in my opinion. After draft, which was that little grace period thing, was a little hiccup that I'm pretty sure we'll improvise and we'll move past on as the season progresses. And starting next season, it'll be way better. Um, I'm very happy. I mean, we got some very competitive coaches, like very strong players. We do got some new people who are new to draft, which is always a good thing because I always admire the fact that people take their interest in draft, especially when they haven't played in it, because it could be fun for some, or it could be like a very bad experience. But it all depends on how you mold those people, like to intake the aspect of draft. You can make it a very good season for them. So, like I said, to like several like draft people, I believe it was I forget his name from the it was Roydman. Roydman. I believe it is Roydman's like one of his like first drafts, competitive drafts. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what we could do and how we could nurture the new players and as well as keep that competitive level with all the coaches. Like I mean, it's gonna be a very fun season. Um,
For sure. I just want to say that we all gotta start somewhere, right? So why not at this league?
exactly, exactly, and especially in this league because we're like at the top place. Well,
Yeah.
above average, not the top place yet, but I mean we're pretty high up there, which I'm proud of, man. And honestly speaking, I could have done it without everybody's effort. I thank everyone from season one to for pouring their heart and effort and giving it their all that one season, and it really means a lot, man. All those uploads, all those content. I know it takes time off your real real time outside of real life, but yeah, I'm just happy. I'm so honored and so privileged to be the league owner of this league, and I mean all the hard work that I'm pouring into it, little by little, I'm seeing it pay off. I know our league probably gets a little bit of envy, or it has people spite it, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's just what we do, and as long as we're happy at what we do and making it as fun as possible, man. Win or lose, as long as you have fun is what matters. That's one thing that I learned about Pokemon, and I
Yeah,
stand firm by that.
yeah. At the end of the day, when people put the work in and when people are having fun, the results will come themselves. You just have to wait a little bit for them to show off.
Yeah, that about sums up my little response right there to your question.
Okay.
And for the audience and spectators, those guys, hearing about what the YCL is about, because in all reality, the YCL about is just about family, community, us having fun, and keeping that competitive scale up there. So that's that.
That's great to hear, San. And that basically sums it up for the draft analysis video. Any last words, San?
Good luck, everyone. Have fun, and don't judge a team by its cover. If a team doesn't have a specific type in its team, doesn't mean that team is gonna fall down or like lose value. You know what I mean?
Unless you're the
'Cause,
league analyst, right?
yeah, unless you're the league analyst. Pretty much, Squid. But I mean, I'm saying this out of experience because, honestly speaking, I won myself a championship, and I won it with a team that lacked like a lot of like types and whatnot. But I managed to pull it through. You know what? It all comes down to how the prep is at the end of the day. It all comes down to prep.
um, yeah, prep and battle skill also.
Yeah, exactly. Activating that shotgun whenever it's necessary.
Exactly. So, thanks everyone for watching. Don't forget to drop a like on the video. Subscribe to all of the coaches on the and the YCL. God, that just still sticks in my mouth. Um, and thank you for Sen being on the video.
Hey, you're welcome. It's an honor and a privilege to be here, guys. I'm really excited. Let's do this, guys.
Let's do this. So, Sen and Squid jetting out.